When Uloma kicked over the pot of boiling soup and poured sand into the wedding feast, the entire village of ACHA fell silent. The girl who had cooked for everyone's happiness had just destroyed a wedding. But to understand why, we need to go back to the beginning. Many years ago in the quiet village of ACHA lived a young woman named Uloma. Everyone knew her because she was polite and always ready to help others, even though life had been difficult for her and her mother since her father passed away. Uloma always had a cheerful spirit and never let sadness take over her heart. But Uloma wasn't just well-mannered. She had special talents, hands that could prepare the most delicious meals, feet that moved gracefully during village celebrations, and a trusting heart that believed in people too easily. She especially believed in a young man named Abika, who lived just a few houses away from hers and had been her best friend for as long as she could remember. They had attended the same local school together, shared meals from the same dishes, climbed mango trees behind a Catholic church, and even got in trouble once for sneaking roasted corn into their classroom. Abika was a boy everyone expected would one day marry Uloma, not because he ever declared it publicly, but because their friendship appeared to be loved to everyone watching, including Uloma, who would sometimes lean her head against his shoulder when they sat outside his mother's home. Uloma was so sure that Abika would marry her that she visited his house every market day to help his mother prepare yam, pick okazi leaves, scrub pots with sand, and sweep the entire yard while his younger siblings ran around calling her Nwanyi, which means our wife. Even though Abika never once told her, "I love you," or said, "I will marry you," he gave her money when she needed to buy sanitary pads, bought her small phone credit cards, and occasionally purchased clothes for her. All these small gestures planted beautiful thoughts in Uloma's mind because she believed that a man who showed such care was simply waiting for the perfect moment to speak the words her heart had already embraced. However, some of her friends like Oluchi and Natsi didn't think Uloma was making the right choice. One day, while waiting in line at the borehole, they pulled her aside and said, "This your Abika? Are you certainly serious?" We hope he said something clearly with his mouth, because men can waste your time like a broken game board. But Uloma smiled and waved her hand dismissively. "Don't worry, Abika is not like that. He knows what he's doing. He's just not someone who talks much." They looked at her and shook their heads with pity. "You know best." However, Abika's mother loved Uloma like her own daughter and would openly tell people that Uloma was the one she wanted for her son. Even though it was always said as if joking, Uloma's heart held onto it like a guarantee. Eventually, she began to politely decline suitors one by one, saying she was still praying or that she wasn't ready, or that her mother needed her help for now. But the truth was that she was simply waiting for Abika to finally speak up. When Abika got a chance to go start a business in the city, she was happy for him because it meant progress for them both. She also cried because she knew her heart would never be the same without him nearby. Still, on the day he left, she hugged him tightly, and when he said, "Take care of my mother for me. I will send something once I get settled," she nodded and smiled like someone who had been blessed. From that day forward, Uloma watched her phone like someone waiting for a miracle to happen. At first, Abika would call her every weekend and ask, "How is mother? How is the village?" She would tell him everything, including which neighbor had just given birth and how the price of crayfish had increased at the market. He would laugh and tell her about city life, business, and stress, and she would feel close to him again. But slowly, the calls became fewer. The airtime stopped coming. Even his good morning messages started arriving only on Sundays, if they came at all. Her friends started telling her again to move on, but Uloma still believed in her heart that the boy who used to peel oranges for her behind the stream would return and say, "Let's do this forever." So she waited. While she waited, she cooked at everyone else's weddings. Uloma cooked when Natsi married a mechanic from Abosi. She cooked when Ali's sister married a pastor's son from Enugu. She even helped prepare yam at the wedding of Amara, the same girl who had once mocked her cooking during home economics class. But Uloma didn't complain. Even when the girls in the village said things about how Abika might already have another girlfriend in the city, or how boys who leave never come back the same, or how some of them return with wives and children, Uloma would just smile and say, "Abika is different." It wasn't as if other men didn't pursue her. One December, A tall, light-skinned doctor named Chibike came with his parents to ask for her hand in marriage, saying he had watched her cook during the festival and that a woman who stirred soup like that must have a good spirit. Honestly, Yuloma's mother was very happy because Chibike was a good man and his clinic in Nui was doing well, but Yuloma told him to give her time to think, and then she later sent word that she wasn't ready for marriage. Then came Emika, the teacher who always greeted her shyly whenever she passed by the school. When he finally brought palm wine and biscuits with his family to visit Yuloma, she told him politely that her spirit had not agreed. Even though everyone said she was being too choosy for someone whose father was no longer alive and whose mother sold roasted yam for a living, Yuloma didn't care. Every time she remembered how Abika used to walk her home after choir practice, and how he once fought with that rude boy from Amaku who insulted her during a football match, her chest would fill with warmth and she would smile. Let me wait a little more, she would think, because she believed that love must be faithful and patient, and that all the girls rushing into marriage were just settling for less. So she continued helping people get married. She cooked at every traditional wedding in the village, waking up before dawn to roast peppers, wash bitter leaf, pound cassava, cut goat meat, and stir large pots of soup that could feed an entire gathering. Even when the sun burned her back and the smoke from the firewood made her eyes red, she still smiled and pounded the fufu as if she was the one getting married. Nobody ever heard her complain, because she loved seeing other people happy. In her heart, she believed that her own day would soon come and people would also gather to cook for her. As expected, her mother began to worry because time was passing and people had started gossiping, saying things like, maybe she's too proud, or she must be secretly married to Abika's spirit. One day her mother asked her, Yuloma, are you still waiting for Abika? Yuloma replied without looking up, I am not waiting, Mama. I am just not ready for anyone else. Meanwhile, Abika's calls had become like harmattan rain, rare and surprising when they came. Sometimes he would call and talk for only 30 seconds, saying things like, I've been very busy, or network here is somehow, and Yuloma would laugh and say no problem. She pretended not to notice the distance growing between them, and she would pray before bed, asking God to protect him and to help her wait without bitterness. But the truth was that her hope was beginning to shake. She just didn't say it out loud. One fateful Saturday, just as the sun rose slowly that morning, Yuloma headed out to cook as usual for a wedding that would be happening that afternoon. The news had been spreading for days that Ngozi, a lady from the next village whose family had recently moved into ACHA, was getting married. Even though Yuloma didn't know Ngozi very well, she still offered to help cook as usual, because that was what she always did, helped everyone else smile, while quietly waiting for her own day that never seemed to come. So she joined the other girls, laughing and pounding yam and cassava as they teased each other and splashed water. When the smoke from the firewood stung her eyes, she wiped it with her blouse and kept stirring the pots, singing softly as the bitter leaf soup began to boil. She danced around like someone whose joy came from deep within, because in her mind, today was just another happy day for someone else, and tomorrow might be her own day, until everything changed. She was slicing onions beside the kitchen wall when her friend Oluchi walked in carrying a small container of palm oil. But the moment Oluchi saw her, she stopped and dropped the container in shock. Yuloma, she called in disbelief. Yuloma looked up and smiled. Oluchi, you finally came. We've almost finished pounding the second batch of yam and cassava. Oluchi didn't smile back. Instead, she came closer and looked her in the eye. Yuloma, come. Please come with me. Why? What happened? Yuloma asked, laughing nervously. Just come, Oluchi said and pulled her by the hand. They walked a few steps away from the firewood smoke to a quiet corner near the side of the house. Do you know whose wedding this is? Oluchi asked. Of course, Yuloma replied. It's Ngozi. I don't really know her, but I just came to help. Yes, Oluchi said and bit her lip. But do you know the man she's marrying? Yuloma laughed out loud. No, who cares? As long as Ngozi is happy. Oluchi looked at her, swallowed hard, and said, It is Abika. The laughter stopped. Yuloma blinked, and then she smiled again, slowly this time. You are joking. I am not, Oluchi said. It can't be him, Uloma smiled. Abika is not even in this village. Oluchi sighed. He came back 2 days ago. I thought you knew. They are doing the wine carrying and bride price payments today. His people are getting dressed right now. They are on their way here. Uloma stood still. Her hands were shaking slightly, and for a moment it was as if all the village sounds had gone silent. The cooking, the music, the shouting, the birds, all of it faded. Oluchi, are you sure? Uloma, I wouldn't lie to you. Without another word, Uloma turned and began to run. She ran like someone being chased by a mad dog, and she didn't stop until she reached Abika's family compound, where the gate was open and the compound was full of people. Women tying wrappers and laughing, men in traditional attire and red caps, and Abika himself standing tall in a well-pressed outfit, adjusting his cap while his uncles gave him instructions. Abika, she called out. He turned around slowly, and for a brief second their eyes met. Uloma, he said with surprise. Is this true? Are you getting married today? Abika didn't speak immediately. He looked away, embarrassed. Uloma, I didn't know you would be here. At that moment, her knees gave way and she collapsed in front of everyone. Uloma woke up later in her own bed at home. The ceiling looked blurry and her head ached, while her chest felt like something heavy was sitting on it. The last thing she remembered was Abika turning away, avoiding her face. She turned and saw her mother beside her, holding a wet cloth and praying. Uloma didn't ask questions. She already knew. As she remembered everything, that memory pulled her up from the bed like magic. Without speaking, Uloma walked out of the house barefoot and headed back to Ngozi's compound like someone under a spell. Her mother called after her, but she kept walking and didn't stop. When she got there, the women were still gathered, stirring soup and wrapping cassava. Without a word, Uloma walked straight to the pot of soup and kicked it over with her bare foot. In 1 second, hot bitter leaf soup spilled onto the sand. Everyone screamed. She turned the cassava basin, grabbed a handful of sand, and poured it into the cassava. They shouted, "Are you mad? What are you doing?" "She has gone mad," someone yelled. Abika came running with some of his friends. When he saw her, his eyes widened. "What are you doing?" She didn't answer. He then turned to young men and ordered, "Please take her away before she causes more trouble." They tried to hold her, and she didn't resist. She didn't cry either. She just stood there quietly as they held her hands and led her away. The people gathered there shook their heads in pity. Poor girl. She thought he would marry her. But she should have asked questions. She should have confirmed. The day after the wedding felt like the sky was mourning with them. The whole of ACHA Village was buzzing with one story, one name, and one scene that nobody could forget, how Uloma, the girl with the golden heart, the girl who cooked for everyone and waited for love like the second coming, had poured sand into the cassava at Abika's wedding and kicked over the bitter leaf soup like someone who was possessed. People gossiped about it. Children acted out the scene in front of their mothers until they were hushed, and elders shook their heads like they had seen too much in their lifetime. This kind of heartbreak is not ordinary, some of them said. She has always been too humble, others added. That is why people climb on her like a ladder. Meanwhile, inside her mother's compound, Uloma sat in silence. She hadn't spoken since they brought her home. She hadn't cried, and she hadn't asked for food or water. She just sat on the edge of the bamboo bed outside, staring at nothing. Her mother tried everything, begging, prayers, cold water, and tears, but nothing moved her. Even Oluchi came and knelt beside her, holding her hands and begging, "Uloma, talk to me now, please. Even if you want to insult me, talk." But Uloma blinked slowly like someone waking from a dream they couldn't escape. That evening, Abika came to visit her. He didn't wear his wedding clothes, but he still looked clean and calm like a man who had finished what he came to do and was now tying up loose ends. He stood at the entrance of the compound, cleared his throat, and knocked gently on the wooden gate. "Good evening, Mama," he greeted respectfully when Uloma's mother came out. "Mama Uloma," she scoffed. "You've come. I thought you finished everything yesterday." "Mama, I wanted to see her," he said. "Please, just for a few seconds." Mama hesitated, looked at him from head to toe, and said, "She hasn't spoken since yesterday." If you like, go and add salt to her wound. She stepped aside for him to walk in. Abika stepped in slowly, and when he saw Euloma sitting by the corner, still wearing the same clothes from yesterday, he paused. She looked fragile, like a painting someone had forgotten in the sun. Euloma, he called. She didn't move. It's me, Abika. Still, she did not answer him. I know you are angry, maybe even heartbroken, but I didn't mean to hurt you. I swear I didn't. She turned her face slightly, but her eyes didn't blink. You and I, we were just friends, Abika continued. I thought you understood that. I thought we both knew what we were. I never said I would marry you. She blinked again. I respected you, he said. I always saw you as someone special, but I didn't know you were waiting for me. I didn't know you turned down other men because of me. If I had known, maybe I would have... You would have what? Mama Euloma's voice interrupted from behind. Married her out of pity? Abika turned sharply. The older woman stood there angrily. You think because she helped your mother, fed you when you were jobless, and followed you around like a loyal goat, that she didn't deserve a proper conversation? Abika shook his head slowly. Mama, I didn't mean... You didn't mean to destroy her, she interrupted. You didn't mean to walk into her life, collect every good part of her, then throw her into the fire at the exact moment when she was trying to serve you soup. Abika looked down with shame, and then he turned to Euloma. Please, I didn't know. I am sorry. I just came to say I am sorry. Euloma looked up and their eyes met. For a brief moment, the village breeze stopped. Then slowly, she stood, walked to the door of the house, opened it, entered, and shut it quietly in his face. Since that wedding, Euloma became a shadow of herself. She no longer went to people's weddings to help them cook, and she ignored every market day and every invitation. Her mother watched helplessly, and even Oluchi, who tried to cheer her up with gossip and jokes, was losing hope because Euloma wouldn't even blink when people spoke. She didn't cry, and she didn't scream. She just sat, breathed, and occasionally walked the stream like a ghost floating on sandals. Until one day, when she met a widow whose daughter had fallen sick and had no money to buy medicine. The woman went from door to door crying, asking for help. No one opened their door except Euloma, who gave her the little money she had left. She didn't even stay back to be thanked. She just gave the widow the money and went back inside. After that day, she started helping her mother roast yam by the roadside again. Even though she rarely smiled or joked with customers anymore, her fire had dimmed, yes, but it was still burning. Meanwhile, Abika's own fire had started to burn him, as city life with Ngozi was not the paradise he had imagined. It was just 1 month after the wedding, and Abika could see that Ngozi was nothing like Euloma. She didn't like to cook or clean or do anything around the house. Worst of all, she didn't even try to adjust. Instead, she complained from morning till night. Why are we living in this dusty area? You expect me to live like a village girl after wedding you. Abika tried to calm her and remind her why they fell in love. But even he began to wonder if it was ever love or just excitement. Every morning there was shouting in their house, and every evening there were silent treatments. Back in ACHA, Euloma was slowly building her life back again. She began to speak more and interact with customers more. One day, as she stood by her mother's stall, a man stopped by to buy roasted yam. His name was Emeka, an engineer from a nearby town. He had come to ACHA for a church roofing project and was now looking for food. You all right? He asked. She nodded. I have heard about you, he said. She raised an eyebrow. In a good way, though, he quickly added. I heard your food is blessed. She smiled. Thank you. Can I buy from you every day while I am around? She paused and then said, If you don't mind smoke and palm oil stains, then you are welcome. Now, back at the city, time moved fast, but in Abika's house, it felt like someone pressed pause and threw away the remote. 3 months into their marriage, and Abika's friends had stopped checking in, because every time they visited, Ngozi was either shouting about how the pepper soup didn't have enough pepper, or she was curled on the couch scrolling endlessly on her phone and looking at them like hungry gluttons. Abika knew that marriage wasn't the romantic dance they showed in movies. It was really about cooking, cleaning, managing money, fixing generator wires, adjusting water pipes, and still smiling before your head exploded. He understood that quite all right, but the problem was that his lovely new wife, Ngozi, didn't share this understanding with him. He had tried to make her understand that cooking dinner was the least she could do to support him for working long hours every day. But Ngozi, being the fine woman that she was not interested in anything that required fire, frying, or lifting a broom. Eventually, Abika gave up. He started waking up early to prepare beans and yam before heading to work, and he began learning YouTube recipes for vegetable soup and jollof rice. His shirts now smelled of seasoning cubes and palm oil. Inside him, Abika burned with shame. This was not the life he imagined. He remembered how Yoloma used to kneel down to serve him steaming white rice with fried fish and stew. How she used to sprinkle scent leaves on his meal like a blessing. How she once pouted when he forgot to say thank you after eating her food. But now he would finish cooking and still have to beg Ngozi to eat. And Madame Ngozi would touch the food and frown. Why is there too much salt in this soup? Why is the meat not soft? Why did you use this kind of plate to serve me? Abika wanted to answer her, but he had no right. After all, he was the one that chose beauty without loyalty. He was the one that left a wife in spirit for a wife in lipstick. So he endured. He cooked, cleaned, and stopped telling his friends what was going on in his house, because he would believe that Abika, the big boy, now knew how to price crayfish at the markets. As for Yoloma, she continued to see Emeka every day at her mother's stall, because the young man couldn't get enough of her pepper sauce. He tried to bring up light conversations with her, but Yoloma was still cautious. He once told her, "Your yam yesterday still lives in my mouth. I even dreamt about it." Yoloma smiled and told him, "Then you should drink hot water before it builds a house there." She smiled, but it wasn't deep because she was still scared. She had seen how men could joke with your time and leave you in shame. Emeka continued to show that he was different. He respected her silence and didn't push, but he was very vocal about how he felt whenever he was with her. She let him, not because she was weak, but because she was finally experiencing what it means for a man to pursue. Months later, Abika came to the village without telling anyone. He just appeared and walked slowly to Yoloma's mother's stall, unsure of what to expect. She was arranging the roasted yam on the table, while Emeka stood beside her, pointing at something in her hand. She looked calm and happy. She was even laughing. Abika stopped and hid at a corner until Emeka left. Then he approached and said, "Yoloma?" She turned and her smile froze. "I heard you're doing well. You look good." She nodded. "And the man that was here, we thank God for him." Yoloma smiled. He swallowed hard. "I came to say I am sorry again." Yoloma looked at him deeply. "You already said that. Besides, I finally understand." "Understand what?" Abika asked. "That people only treat you like nonsense when they think you don't have any sense." "Yoloma, please." "I forgive you," Yoloma said. "Whether I forget or not doesn't matter anymore." And with that, she turned and continued arranging her yam. It was a bright Saturday morning in ACHA Village, and everyone was excited because a wedding was happening that day. However, this wasn't the wedding of some random villager. This was Yoloma's wedding. The same Yoloma who poured soup away and spoiled cassava at someone else's wedding just last year. The same Yoloma whose silence made the entire village walk on tiptoes. The same Yoloma who once sat by her mother's house, like a statue mourning her own breath. She was now dressed in coral beads and expensive George wrapper and blouse, smiling like a proud bride. She was marrying Emeka, not because he promised her heaven and earth, but because he proved with his actions that he didn't see her as a convenience or as a backup plan. Instead, he saw her as a partner, a prize, and a woman whose wounds didn't make her less of a wonder. That evening, when the wedding was over, Yoloma followed Emeka to his house in the city, and just as she was settling in, Emeka brought her roasted corn and coconuts. She took a bite and smiled. "You didn't tell me marriage came with food gifts." He grinned. "I am only trying to impress my wife." Yoloma looked at him and paused. "I used to cook for people, my friends, even strangers. I would wake up before sunrise to pound yam, stir vegetable soup, and wash plates till my fingers wrinkled. But nobody ever asked me if I wanted to eat too. Nobody ever fed me. Emika brought out a bottle of malt and gave it to her, then let me be the first. She received it, and tears of gratitude poured down from her face. Meanwhile, in Abika's flat, Ngozi was filming a TikTok video about lazy village men who couldn't afford shawarma, while Abika stood in the kitchen stirring soup and trying to avoid the smoke coming from the burner. This was the same pot someone had willingly stirred for him countless times, only that he never put any value to it. Now this same pot stirring had come full circle, making him the one stirring, and he had no idea how long the cooking spoon would last in his hands. Thank you for watching the story. Kindly share your thoughts about the story with me in the comment section. To anyone liable to fall into the trap, remember that assumption is not love, and clarity can save you a lot. So always ask questions, because friendship without words can be a trap. Kindly share this story with your loved ones. Give the story a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye.